Hello everyone, this is Ian here with UDA Technologies, and we are just about ready to dive into scheduling. Our goal today, of course, is going to be to take you guys through on-plan scheduling and show you all the different areas that the scheduled tasks will affect things like your company calendars and to-do lists and things like that. But before I dive into the specifics for the schedules, though, a couple of things on how you guys can manage some of the time frames that you guys have here in ConstructionSuite. Now, to begin with, when you first log into the program, of course, it's going to take you here to the Today page. On the Today page, you guys will see all of the nice dashboard and graph elements on this dashboard tab. Under the Summary tab, though, you're actually going to get an overview for all of the recent or relevant information that's going on right now within the ConstructionSuite system. So you'll see recent projects, recent contacts, and files. You'll also see all the activities that are either recently expired or up and coming to make sure that all this stuff is getting done in a timely manner. And same for the to-dos and the to-do list. And when you're taking a look through all this information, the details for these activities and to-dos are being pulled from the calendars and the to-do lists that are available over on the navigation panel on the left-hand side. So if you pan over to that left-hand navigation panel, which mine is showing up in gray here, and the first area that I'd like you to take a look at is the calendar itself. Now, when you first come to the calendar, it's going to open up a month view for what's going on in the company right now. This month view is going to show you all the content that's going on for all the jobs across all the different users and everything like that. And it's going to be based on all the schedules that have been set up, the appointments that have been made, meetings that have been scheduled, callbacks and lead reminders and things like that as well. All of this information is going to get gathered together in this company calendar, and you'll see all the details for you laid out right here. Now, of course, you'll be able to take a look at this and notice that there are a couple of distinguishing features for these activities. As an example, some of them are showing up in gray, like the Stokes Office tasks here. This is because that job itself, the Stokes Office project in ConstructionSuite, has been configured to show all of its activities in gray on the calendar. On the same hand, KB Real Estate, this next green project here, this one's all set up to be that green color on the calendar. Some of the other ones are going to show up as a standard or default blue color, like all these lead callbacks and so on. This is just the standard color for tasks in ConstructionSuite, not specific to a job or anything like that. And it's one of the many ways that you can just kind of get a quick overview for what jobs are associated with which tasks here on the calendar. Now, to add to this, I've got icons in front of each of the tasks that we're looking at here. So, for example, my callback here for Ben Wyatt or for John Stokes, these are all going to be lead forecast or lead events. Here's a callback for Lisa Simpson, forecasted close dates for Ben Wyatt and John Stokes. Ross Spafford has one as well, but this is the expiration date. The star in this case represents activities that pertain to leads. So you'll see some of those in there. This version of ConstructionSuite is a commercial version, so I've got the correspondence tracking, and one of those pieces of correspondence here, the submittal, has the little submittal icon next to it, or the correspondence icon rather, and it's a reminder to me that this submittal should have been approved already, or should have been taken care of as of the 29th of February. So Monday it should have been handled, and in this case, since it's not marked off yet, I can assume that it hasn't been fully finished, along with the callback for Lisa and most of the rest of this as well. Typically, when something is completed, the name will either stay on the calendar and show up as the name with a strike through in it. Alternatively, you can set the view here to remove anything that's completed so that it doesn't clutter up your calendars. Now, you can actually take that a step further as well. You've got some of these that have the little pull tags, and those are scheduled tasks. Others that have the little milestone diamond, the icon here representing that it is a milestone. And you can switch on and off all the different types of activities here on the calendar using the visible activity types button here. It's the one that kind of looks like a gear or a cog or flywheel or something. But this options button allows you to come into and turn on or off various different activity types in the company calendar, and it's a tremendously useful tool for the different types of users that you guys might have coming into the system. For example, with all the lead calls that I have in the calendar here in ConstructionSuite, this information is going to be really useful for my sales team. So in this case, the sales team might go through and turn off everything in the calendar except for things like lead callbacks and lead meetings and things like that. So they might have a very simplified view, look something like this. My project management and my project coordinators, though, they might have a slightly different set. They might want to turn on everything except for the lead content so that they don't necessarily need to go through and see all of that. We'll leave meetings on, though. Those are pretty important. Everybody needs to go to those. There we go. So you can switch it around a little bit, and this is going to be a very user-specific setting. Each user will be able to choose what type of activities show up for them, and in this case you can kind of focus in on the activity types that pertain most to your jobs. You can actually take this a step further as well. If you'll notice up in the top right corner, there's a filter drop-down menu here that allows you to filter the full company calendar down to a specific contact or project, a specific group of contacts like all your electricians, or a project group as well. So if you guys have like an office complex that you're working on and that's one of your project groups, you could filter down to see all the different jobs that you're working on in that complex. Or a subdivision if you guys are doing houses, or certain area of like New York City or LA or something like that if you break yours up by areas. So all of these would be possibilities, and you could use the project groups to organize that and see what's going on for these different project groups and filter that information down. Now, of course, these kind of filters that you're looking at allow you to change what shows up on the calendar, but right now we're just looking at the month view, which is a little bit of a larger view. As you focus in on what's going on in slightly more real time, you could switch over to the week view, which will show you everything going on this week. Obviously, Monday was a very busy day as we tried to wrap up everything. As you get into the day view, it's typically going to take you to the first day of the week, so you might need to take a look down at the right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner, where you'll see the little calendar tab, and you can click on a date here to take you to that specific date in the day view. Makes it a little bit easier there. And as you flip into the list view as well, this is going to give you a kind of a it allows you to filter to a specific date range. You'll find those filters up here, and then you can turn on or off various different columns to give yourself a kind of an overarching Gantt view if you're interested, like this one is, or you can organize this by task types or project numbers or something like that. When you right click on the column headers, there's plenty of additional things that you can turn on or off. Just to make sure that this provides the additional calendar-based reporting that you guys may need to review. So again, this is all going to be on the list view, and you can pick your date range here, your date frame. The last tab in this calendar view, or the calendar set, is your year view. And this is actually one of the newer features to ConstructionSuite as well, but your year view that you're going to be looking at here is kind of a heat map for how intense or how active your team is going to be over a given period of time. Ultimately, when you're looking at the year view here, the color coding represents the density of activity. The closer to green the day is on the calendar, like you've got here at the beginning of January, end of December, the closer to green it is, the less activity you have. The closer to red, the more activity. So over here in April, for example, the last couple of weeks of April are going to be pretty busy, but the first couple of weeks, or most of January, barring the 19th, are pretty open. There's not a whole lot going on there. So you can see all these different dates and everything like that as you're going through and you're looking at the heat view. Where this really provides a huge benefit to people is it gives you the ability to look at the company as it's working as a whole and find places where you need to plug in additional jobs to keep your team busy. Like right now I can see that work is kind of tapering off in May. So I should start planning at this point to start plugging in some additional projects here in May to keep my team moving forward and to make sure that, well, we all have something to do. So the year view does a great job of showing you this kind of gap. And the same filters apply here as well. If you filter down to a specific project or group of projects or anything like that, the year view will update based on these new parameters. So again, just a great tool or set of tools here under the calendar tab to figure out how active your team is going to be. And all of the information that shows up in the calendars here in ConstructionSuite, let's flip it back to the month view, all the information that's showing up here in the calendars should be coming from things that are scheduled or aligning times between multiple people or setting up times for people to show up on job sites. This is all about making sure that the time is right and everybody is aware of what time these things happen. So that said, sometimes you'll need to add to this, of course. And if you ever need to add another activity, the easy option is to just double click on the day that you want to add the activity and you'll get the new activity pop-up window here. From this new activity pop-up window, you'll be able to set a subject line for your activity, what type of activity it is, and you can always go in and create new activity types here if you need to. You can put in a little brief description of it and assign it to people in this area. You'll also be able to set up reminders for yourself or for others. Anytime that you set up a reminder for one of these tasks, those reminders can go out. Let's add a new reminder here. The reminders can go out via email, text message, or just internally as a pop-up message for anybody using the system. Now, the really fun part about this too is these reminders that you're configuring within ConstructionSuite here, they do have the ability to reach the outside world, but if you go back to the Activities tab and actually assign resources or contacts, this information can also sync up to ConstructionOnline and pop up for people in their on-site mobile apps. So if you guys have a ConstructionOnline account, even if it's a basic one, and you guys have SuiteLink in place, which is one of those total care features that builds the bridge connecting your ConstructionSuite software to your ConstructionOnline software, that link allows you to automatically sync up your activities and your content in the calendars in ConstructionSuite to your calendars online, which is what feeds the mobile apps as well. So your ConstructionSuite calendar is the same as your online calendar, is the same as your company calendar through your mobile app. And all of this information is going to be updated in real time, regardless of which device you're adjusting the information for. So calendars are really easy to work with and pass out information for. And if you do set up those reminders to go out, it just adds to this good experience. You're literally putting in all these different ways to communicate with people and make sure that they get the information that they need. Now again, the activities themselves are all about setting up a specific date and time for an event, but some activities that you guys work on or some tasks don't necessarily have these same kind of constraints, and those tasks would typically go in your to-do list. So your to-do list is typically broken up into one-off items. Let's get rid of some of these extras that I've been putting in here. They're typically the one-off items that might have a specific due date, but they don't necessarily require that you do them at a very specific time. So it could be something that I want to get done by the end of next week, for example, in which case you could just come up and create a new to-do, set a due date for the end of next week, to YouTube. And same thing as before, you can assign them to different people, either as resources or as contacts, and you can assign them to projects. But again, the idea here is you've got a due date, got to be done by a certain time, but you don't necessarily have a start date. So it could be done any time leading up to in this case, the 11th of March. You can also put in details and things like that as well, just to make sure that the information is set up and prepared. And when you do this, this will show up as one of the tasks in your to-do list. Same as before, this task list or this to-do list is going to sync up to ConstructionOnline. You'll be able to go online and view that as your to-do list. It'll also send the information over to the on-site mobile apps for your phone as well. So pull up on-site to-do, you'll see the same list that you see when you sit down in front of ConstructionSuite. If you check it off in on-site to-dos, your mobile app there, it will actually fall off of this list as well. Show up as one of your completed to-dos. Now you'll also notice that this area does have the bubble sorting option up at the top as well. So anything that has a due date, but the due date is in the past, will obviously show up as an overdue to-do. These overdue to-dos, and until you check them off and mark them as complete, are just going to sit here in the red and hopefully nag at you until you get them taken care of. Otherwise, everything should show up under the upcoming to-do list or the incomplete to-do list for everything that still needs to be accomplished, even though it's not past its original due date. As you check those things off, they do become available in the completed to-dos section here, and you can see that they've all been checked off, and that's why. Same sort of filter options apply here as did on the calendar as well. You've got your filter drop-down menu up here in the top right-hand corner. You can change out how much information is going to be available, and just like with the list view, you can also right-click on any of your column headers to turn on additional information here. So if you wanted to show the creators or the assigned resources or something like that, check the boxes here, and it'll show you how far along you're getting and what sort of information you guys want to see. Obviously, these are all mine, so there you go. So you've got to-dos, and that's your task list. You've got your calendars, and that shows you all your meetings and appointments and activities and everything like that. But the real work that you want to get done today is going to be putting together the schedules, like for the Stokes office, and mapping out how these tasks relate to one another. So to do that, at this point, we need to go ahead and shift gears over to the scheduling system. Now, to begin with, you're going to have schedules generated in one of two ways. You're either going to start with a scheduling template, which you can find up here in the Schedule tab, or you're going to create your schedules based on your estimates. Now, I'm going to start by taking you guys through the Schedule template option, because as you go into the Schedule templates, you'll be able to create an outline for your standard jobs and link all of your tasks together so that the relationships are built before you guys even start with putting in durations and setting the start time for the schedule or anything like that. So when you go into the Scheduling tab, it shows you this week in review right here from the tab, and it shows you some of your recent schedules that you've been working on and things like that. In my case, I'd recommend you guys flip over to the Create New tab for the schedules and take a look at some of the templates that we offer just by default in ConstructionSuite. So if you come into, let's say, the residential or the remodeling folders, you'll see a couple of different master templates from these. And just like with the estimates yesterday, if you right-click on any of these files, you can edit the template, and this will open it up and allow you to start making these connections between your tasks. The reason that I push people to typically start with like the residential master, the remodeling master, or one of the commercial master templates, these scheduling templates have a lot of the content already built in, and all you have to do is start linking them together, just like with the estimate templates. So in our case, typically when a project starts, you're going to start by making sure that the job site facilities are set up. So here they are. Job site facilities is a header, and I've got all the information in here, like getting the project phone set up on the job site, construction utilities set up there as well. Portable restrooms, of course, have to be dropped off. We got to get signage in place, and we need to make sure that we've got that job site office if needed. So all of this information is going to be considered part of the job site facilities. And what we'd need to do at this point, the start dates and the end dates for a template are irrelevant. What you need to do is start making sure that you map out how these tasks connect to one another, and that's your primary goal in working with a scheduling template. So to begin with, let's just go over some of the options that are available on this Gantt chart. On the right-hand side, of course, this is your Gantt chart information. This is where you can actually see the dates across the top and how these tasks link together and create that kind of a waterfall effect or a stair-step effect going through the Gantt chart schedule. On the left-hand side, this is your task information. This is where you'll see groups like job site facilities, and tasks like project phone and construction utilities and portable restrooms. The big distinguishing factor between these groups and tasks, groups are always going to be in bold and in a blue line here. Tasks are always going to be in just standard text in white rows. And it's the tasks that will always determine the start dates, end dates, and durations for your groups. And I mention this because if you want to change any of the information for a group, your real only option here is to change the name of this group. So click into the field for the name, and you can call this whatever you like. But you can't change anything like start dates or end dates or durations. This information is all being pulled from the tasks within it. And this is what happens when you double click on one of those groups. Again, nothing in here that we can really define. All of it is coming from the tasks. And that's why the group shows up on the Gantt chart as a curled brace instead of another task like this project phone does. So again, the brace means that it's just kind of acting as a folder, encapsulating how much time you're going to be spending on all job site setup. When you want to come into and start making changes to some of these lines, like the project phone, you can do the same thing as before. You can always just click into it to adjust the task name. You can click into and change the start date for this, end date for this, duration for the task, or you can set predecessors in this column as well. Now your predecessors column, some of this is very straightforward. You know what the name of the task is going to be. You can set a start date and an end date, but again, that doesn't typically happen until you're going live with a project, so don't take the time to set your start dates and end dates in a template. Duration is the same way. It's going to change based on the job that you guys are working on, but the predecessors are really where you want to spend the time here. Set up your tasks, set up your predecessors, and then that way, when the job begins, you can use this template, and all you have to do is go through and set the durations for your tasks. So these predecessor relationships, I mentioned earlier that these are going to be relationships between your tasks in the schedule. And those relationships are all going to be based on your task IDs, which you'll see over here on the left-hand side. So job site setup technically counts as task 1, but it's a group, so you can't base anything off of this. Task 2 is going to be your project phone. That's the first task, and I'm going to be using that as my starting point for a lot of this. But my portable job site office is actually going to be the first thing that I want to get set up out on the job site itself. We have a little trailer that we're going to be sending out there. Once that gets dropped off, then we can hook up all the utilities and set up the phone in there and everything like that. So portable job site office is the starting point. Now with that said, it doesn't necessarily have to be the first task in the group, but you can always shift the position of these tasks by going up to the, let's see, it's the task menu, and you'll find a couple of different position shifting tools here in the edit menu. So I want to move my portable job site office up in this list, so we'll click portable job site office and then use the move up function to shift it to the top of the section. Now you could always use things like cut and paste or copy and paste if you needed to shift them around as well. I just choose the move up option because it's relatively quick and easy, and this would put portable job site office first in my job site setup process. Now once the job site is dropped off on the job, which doesn't take very long, the next setup is going to be things like the project phone and the construction utilities. So in this case, if we wanted to set up a project phone, this is going to follow the office in setup, and the way to build that relationship is just to put in task ID 2 as the predecessor for project phone. Task ID 2, of course, is portable job site office, so that means now that this task, project phone, has to wait until task ID 2 is done before I can start. So portable job site office has to be done, then project phone can begin, and you can see over on the Gantt chart side that now we have this relationship built between them. This arrow indicates that predecessor relationship. And the more of these things that you add, the more you're going to start to see this kind of chain together over here on the other side. Oh, put in an invalid one there. Let's shift this back a little bit. Now what I'm doing is I'm linking all of these tasks together and making sure that everything gets dropped off on the job site. And it's based on these predecessor IDs, and right now I get the easy ones. So things like project phone and construction utilities and dropping off the portable restrooms and everything like that, this is all very straightforward. So the tasks that I'm putting up here are going to be very, very easy. Now when you start to get into some of the more complicated work, like in this case we've got site work that would be coming next, site work might not be allowed to begin until some of these tasks up top are ready. So maybe site work doesn't start until we post signage for the job. That's going to be my trigger in this case, so I'll put in task ID 6 as my predecessor, and now site work is going to wait until signage is done, and then we can get started. Similarly, once the site work is finished, that's when we can start footer's labor. So task ID 8 becomes my predecessor here. But my materials need to actually be dropped off at the job site when I'm ready to start footer's labor. So that's, since I need them dropped off before I begin this task, the predecessor relationship type is going to be a little bit different. Now it's still the footer's labor that really determines the starting point for this, so I know that it's going to be task ID 9, but rather than using a standard predecessor relationship, which would mean that 9 has to finish before I can start footer's materials, I'm going to flip that. I'm going to say that the footer's materials has to be finished when 9 starts, and that can be represented by using a predecessor relationship type of SF, start to finish. This means that 9's start is when I have to be finished with this task, and when you look at the relationship over on the Gantt chart, you'll see that now footer's materials is always going to be just ahead of footer's labor. Now in this case, because I need it delivered on this date, you might also need to come into this task and set a reminder for yourself. We'll get to that in just a couple of minutes, but just so you know, the option is going to be right up here. But in this case, let's continue going through. So next task in this list is going to be my footer's inspection. Now the inspection, of course, is going to happen after I'm done with footer's labor, so task ID 9 is still my predecessor. So you can see that the relationships are starting to build here. But this is also a little bit of a different type of task. The inspection itself doesn't take a whole day. Usually just takes, a short little period of time. So I'm going to set this up as a milestone, which would be a 0-day task. Milestones have a different type of icon over here on the Gantt chart. It's a little diamond. And this, again, just represents something that's quick and easy and accessible and doesn't take a whole lot of time. You'll also notice on the calendar back in ConstructionSuite when you save this or apply this to a live job, you'll notice that the milestones show up as a different type of task than your standard activities on the calendar. So a couple of different options that you guys will have there. And as you go through and kind of finish out some of this additional information, things like foundation labor, that begins once the footer's inspection is complete, so task ID 11. Next up, we've got foundation materials. Same as before, I want a start to finish relationship type so that my foundation materials get to the job site the day before I need them. And then after the foundation is finished, we can do the inspection. But here's another one. When the foundation itself is inspected, you guys might want to give it just a day or two to make sure that everything is settled and you guys don't have to worry about anything different. So it's entirely possible that somewhere in this schedule, you're going to be building in a lead time or a lag time. Now, the first step, of course, the inspection is still a milestone. These are quick and easy. And you've still got the predecessor relationship of task ID 12, because that's foundation labor and we're doing an inspection. But if you wanted to go ahead and do the foundation labor and set everything up so that it's ready to go, and then wait a day to see if anything settles funny, you can just put in +1 day, and now you'll have a built-in gap. There's one extra day built in there. So if the foundation labor is extended out to 10 days, there's going to be 1 day where you guys aren't doing anything on the job site then, and then the inspection can happen shortly after that. So little things like that allow you to build in those lead times or lag times, and it works the same way in reverse. So if we're doing the concrete slab labor next, this is going to happen after your foundation. Same as before, materials need to be delivered, so we'll do 15 start to finish relationship type so that they get delivered early. Then we'll give the concrete a little bit of time to set as well before we do the inspections. Or maybe not in this case. Maybe you want to catch it before it's completely set, just in case you need to smooth anything out. In which case, this one, just a straight relationship type. And we might not even use foundation miscellaneous, so I'm just going to delete that one altogether. And again, under the task menu, you've got the delete button there as well. So once again, this just allows you to kind of daisy chain everything out. And now that concrete slab is finished and we've got an inspection there, we can get started with framing labor. But same thing as before. The foundation needs to set before we can begin the labor for the framing. So once the inspection is done, I'm still going to give it 2 or 3 days. We'll say 3 working days. And that's just that built-in time to make sure that the concrete is settled before we begin framing labor. Now we've got this additional set of materials, and the materials, just like with everything else, we want to make sure that everything is on the job site when we need it, and there could be various different delivery times that you guys built into this, but I'm just going to make sure that it all gets set up at the same time. This template has a lot of different materials in here, and you don't necessarily have to use them all like this. You can always just turn this into a single task if you wanted to, and maybe just change the name of the first one, and then delete all the extra ones and just call it a framing package or something like that. But I'm going to keep them separated for the time being. I'm still going to do my relationship type here as a 19 start to finish, so that I get those right around the time that I'll need them on the job site. Looks like it tried to put it on a holiday there, so it just pushed it off to the next day, which is okay. It'll fix itself once we use this on the job. But the rest of these I'm going to order at the same time that I order the floor system materials. And rather than basing them all off of my framing labor, I'm just going to say that all the following tasks start at the same time my floor system materials tasks start. And this would be represented by a start-to-start relationship, or SS. So you can do that. You can also set up a different type of relationship here, which is a finish-to-finish relationship, which is also completely fine for these materials. They're all basically pick up the phone and call in to order the materials, so they allow you to do that. But sometimes you'll have 2 things that need to start at the same time. Other times you might have 2 that need to end at the same time. So your start-to-start creates a relationship where 2 things start at the same time. Finish-to-finish, both tasks end at the same time, and depending on how you want to organize your schedule, you can use combinations of these things. You could set up 20 SS plus 4, so it's going to start 4 days after another task begins, or 20 FF minus 2, so that it's going to end 2 days before your other task is going to end, things like that. So plenty of different options in there to make these things happen, and you'll be able to work with it from there. So we've got a question coming in. Is there a list of abbreviations that we're using where you can find things like SF equaling start to finish, or are there typical codes or something like that that should be used? That is a great question, and yes, there is actually. if you come up to the top and select the edit option, this is going to allow you to see a full listing for all the information for this particular task. So in this edit task window, you'll be able to see things in here like start dates and relationships and durations and everything like that. And if you go through and take a look at some of the options that are available, the predecessors field is going to be one of these. And when you add a new predecessor, it's going to allow you to pick from this list which task needs to come before it. And then it's going to guide you through the relationship type and setting a lead time or a lag time right here as well. So this one just provides a little bit of an easier outline for what you guys are going to be working with. And as you start to build these things, you'll notice that the tasks are going to be linking together over on the Gantt chart. You can even set up multiple predecessors both in here or on the predecessor column just by using a comma to separate those. So again, if you ever need to, you can always edit the task and go to the predecessors tab to pull up some of the additional information in here. Now, once again, as you guys are going through the templating process, your primary focus should be setting up an outline for the schedule here that includes things like relationships between tasks, which you can do in the predecessors tab here or in the column. Setting up your group names and your task names and making sure that that information is correct. If you guys are using one of our templates, it's going to be mostly available, and you can just use the task menu to delete extra tasks or add in new groups and tasks from this task menu as well. Those are going to be available to you guys here. And if you do edit the task, you'll be able to see some additional options that you guys might want to work with. Again, you've got predecessors here. If you go to the tasks tab, you can set up priority for these tasks and statuses and things like that. You'll also be able to give yourself some notes, which might be important for general task notes or field notes from the schedule. You'll also be able to come into this area and set up some reminders. So we talked about doing the materials orders and things like that earlier. This is a material order as well. So if you wanted to set up a reminder to order your materials to get them delivered at the right time, you can set those up here. And that reminder can be set up just like it does in the activities in your calendar. You click the little option for adding a new reminder and set how far in advance you want that reminder to come to you. And then when you go under Notify Resources or Notify Users, you'll have a couple of different options on how it sends you that notification. Either email, text messages, or if you just go take a look at the calendar, you could get pop-ups and stuff like that too. So it becomes a pretty easy option to go ahead and pre-configure a lot of these reminders to go out. And you'll notice that the reminder messages themselves have these little title lines and the curled braces. These will be filled in as soon as the reminder actually triggers. So it doesn't matter if you set up your reminders in the template. This information is going to update itself so that it would give you the correct information when the time comes to get the reminder. It would say, like in this case, it'll say this is a reminder to schedule, order, bid, the required resources for fascia and soffit materials on the whatever your project name is, maybe Simpson TI project, which is scheduled to begin work on right now 1/3/2011. Later it's going to be updated to be 3/17/2016 or something like that. So Patty's Day. But ultimately, you can set up these reminder messages so that they're all in here and prepared ahead of time. And once again, as you're going through and you're setting up all of this information, don't forget you always need to come up to and save these templates regularly so that all the work that you're putting into it, chaining all of these tasks together, is available the second you need to use it on a job. So that's working with the templates. As I mentioned, most of the updates that you're going to be doing here will involve updating the task information, setting up the right groups and tasks. If you go to the task field, you can add new groups and new tasks right here. You can also edit the information for your task names and your predecessor relationships. This is going to be the majority of the content that you guys set up in there. Those and the reminders allow you guys to finish out these schedules, and then you can go to the File menu and either save it over your existing template, overwrite the residential master that you had before, or you can create a new template off of this one as well. So might be a decent way for you guys to go through and create a couple of different template types for the types of jobs that you guys might be doing. For example, I was working with a remodeler earlier who does kitchens and bathrooms. This is his primary workload, so he's got one kitchen schedule template, he's got one bathroom schedule template, and then he's got a generic schedule template, just in case he decides to branch out a little bit further. We've got some commercial users as well that'll build out the entire schedule based on what type of project they're working on. So if they're doing like a Dunkin' Donuts, that's got one schedule. A doctor's office might have a slightly different schedule. If they're doing an office complex like ours, like a strip mall style building with several different office spaces in it, could have a completely different one. Or a tenant improvement project could have a different one as well. Ultimately, though, you can set up as many of these different schedule templates as you like, with the idea being that you don't need to go into the schedule template afterwards or the schedule later and rebuild these connections. They're all there and ready to go. So how does this apply on a job? So we've got a template now, and that's going to be the residential master. When you open up one of the projects, and you take a look at the project overview, you'll find some options on here for where to create your schedules. Typically, if there is no schedule for the job, you can scroll down on project details, and there'll be an option here to create a new schedule. It'll be linked right here. Alternatively, for those of you who are using the Premier or Catalyst versions of ConstructionSuite and above, you'll also find an entry in most of the workflows to create the schedule, which launches your scheduling wizard. So here it is, there's Create Schedule with the little action item. Click on the action item and it'll pull up, well, I thought it was the scheduling wizard. I might have reconfigured it to actually launch a specific template. No, there we go. So there's the schedule wizard. And from here, you can pick one of your pre-built templates from this Select a Predefined Schedule option. If you guys want to start from scratch, you can always do that, but I don't recommend it. It's a little bit more tedious. So I'm going to go with a predefined template, and in this case, let's go find that residential master that I was just working on. So pick that template, click Finish, and it'll open up for you. You'll notice, too, as you're going through this, that all of the dates and times and everything like that for the tasks are going to be adjusted because we're using the schedule now. In the template, everything was starting back at the beginning of 2011. I've had this installation for a long time, and that's where the original schedule templates were that I created. So this one now starts in 2016, and it's going for as close to today as possible. And you can see that all of my relationships are already built in. I've got that going for me, which is good. So at this point, all I need to do is start going down and saying this task will take 2 days to get the job site office on the job. The phone is going to be installed almost immediately, but utilities will take a little while. Portable restrooms are going to be an instant delivery or close enough to it. Signage is going to be pretty quick too, so there you go. Now in this case, you might notice that the utilities are going to be getting hooked up on the job site after I begin site or after we begin site work. Totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And in this case, as you guys are moving through the system, you're going to have other tasks that overlap too. So sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident. Either way is great. Just make sure that you're using as much of this valuable time as you can. So as we go through though, on foundation, next up I've got site work. Site work might take me and my guys 8 days to complete. And then we're going to do footers labor. That's going to be 5 days. Don't pay any attention to my time frames here because they're all completely bogus. Then we go on to footers inspection, and then we'll go into foundation labor as well, and so on. So you can see how this is going to start to build out the schedule, and you can see that it's also stretching pretty far out here to the right. So in this case, you might need to use your little zoom bar down in the bottom right-hand corner just to make sure that you can still get a good idea of what's going on through your job. Now at this point too, you might look at this schedule and realize that there's a couple of other things that are going on that you guys need to account for as well. So maybe you guys have some extra holiday time coming up and you guys want to go ahead and build that holiday into your schedules, or maybe you've got to start working on Saturdays for a little while because you guys really need to get some jobs done. Ultimately, if that happens, you can go up to the options menu and you'll find some tabs on here. The big important tab is going to be your work days and holidays tab, where you can go in and set your typical work week here. I work Monday through Friday, so there it is. You can also then show all of the different holidays that you guys observe in the office. If you guys have these as non-working days, make sure that you check them off here, and you can see that we've got a couple of different tabs depending on what sort of holiday set that you guys might need to be observing here. But as you set up a lot of these different holidays, the schedule is going to adapt to these extra time frames that are non-working days. Now you can always switch over to the exceptions tab and go to working days and non-working days and set up the special ones here. But otherwise, yeah, if you go through and you set up some of this information and click OK, you'll be all set. Of course, doing that means that some of your dates are going to get pushed back a little bit. Others maybe might shrink a little bit if you have more non-holidays than previously done. But ultimately, it should help map out how everything's going to go. So, in this case, you've put together all the connections. You've got all the information out there. I would recommend, too, that if you guys need to make any further adjustments, you can always come over here onto the Gantt chart site itself and actually drag and drop these tasks around as well. It's going to allow you to move these tasks as often as you want, and the predecessors are not always going to force your tasks to start at the earliest possible start date. This is because the default setting for most of your tasks in ConstructionSuite will be to use soft predecessors, or soft dependencies rather, and that means that the predecessor relationship sets the earliest that a task can begin. The task can be a little bit longer, however, or it could start a little bit later, however, if needed. And that's how I can take this site work task and move it far away from its predecessor, which is signage. Now, if that ever happens and you have extra time in there that you want to get rid of, you can always come up to the Tools menu in this case and compress the schedule back down again. And compressing the schedule will squeeze out all of the extra time in the schedule so that you don't end up with big gaps like I have here. So compressing the schedule is a great tool to make sure that you adjust this from time to time. If you want the schedule to do that for you automatically, there's a feature in here called ASAP, which can be set for any individual tasks, or you can click this button to set all tasks to be ASAP tasks. And that means that if you ever try to drag it out further than it would typically start, it's always going to snap back to the earliest possible start date. So I've had a lot of people ask about this in the past, setting ASAP for everything, and if you guys want that to be how your schedule thinks, then just make sure that you come in here and select Mark All Tasks as ASAP under the Tools menu. Now, some of the other options that you guys will have in here as you guys are going through your schedules as live schedules for the job. Of course, you guys have looked through the task menu where you can move your tasks around and insert new tasks and set up predecessors. Under the Tools menu, you guys will have things like compressing your schedule or marking ASAP. You can also jump around in the schedule a little bit just in case you wanted to see different views, which will also have several different views available to you guys in the View tab. If you go to the Projects tab, you can also do things like setting baselines. Baselines are going to be a snapshot of your schedule at any given point, and this just allows you to see where you stood at any given point in time. So it's a really useful tool for mapping out where you were as opposed to where you are now, and I highly recommend setting a baseline before you make any schedule adjustments because of delays or anything like that. So really important piece there, and I want to make sure that you guys see these. You can have multiple baselines set. There's no limit to the number that you guys have set up, but only one will ever show at a time. Now you'll also be able to do things too, like shift your project start date. It defaults to starting at today's date, but if you guys wanted to push it back a month or something like that, you certainly could. Just come in here and shift it based on however far back you need it to go. And then of course you've got all these different view and color options and everything like that. So moving on through, we've talked about tasks, projects, Tools menu. The View menu is all very straightforward. I want to show just critical path items, or maybe we wanted to show just milestones or active tasks or something. You can do that. Under the Resources list, you'll be able to take a look at who you guys are going to be assigning to these tasks and add resources to the tasks right here. So the Add Resource view is a really, really handy one because it helps you manage who you're using on these jobs. So if you come in and you add a task or add a resource to one of these tasks and select Add New when it takes you into the Resources tab, this will give you an overview for who you have available and what kind of work they're doing at any given time. Let's go with the B's. And what I mean by that is now we're looking at Baker Power, and on my various different projects, Baker Power is actually going to be working on several different things from the middle of June out through the middle of February. And then again at the beginning of March, they're going to be working on something for almost the entire month. You'll be able to see what kind of tasks they're working on by clicking on the day. It'll show you up top what they're doing and how long that task or the event stretches. So it's an easy way to just go through and verify who's doing what and when. So this just allows you to put all that information together and see where it's going to slide in. And if you ever needed to double book somebody, you'd be able to recognize immediately that that's what you're doing. Now, furthermore, when you do try to schedule something for an event, if you click OK, you should get one of two pop-ups, potentially, when you schedule them. The first one is here, the No Certificates pop-up, and the idea here is I have not yet configured the insurance information or my workman's comp or anything like that I should have on file for Baker Power. And so the system is letting me know that without that information, I'm risking a very expensive insurance audit. Now, you can always click OK and proceed with scheduling them anyway, and if you do this, your next one is the Schedule Conflict prompt. So this is going to notify you that not only now have they skipped over the fact that they don't have insurance information, now I'm saying I've already used them somewhere, and I'm acknowledging that I'm double booking this particular resource. So I'm going to click OK anyway because I just really want to get them in there. So you can always ignore these things, but keep in mind that the system is trying to make sure that you're being efficient and that you guys are covered in the off chance that there's ever any kind of insurance audit or anything like that. I don't want you guys getting hit with one of those $50,000 bills because your roofer wasn't covered or something like that. So again, really important that you guys make sure that this information is set up, and those certificates, by the way, are all going to be available on the contacts list back in ConstructionSuite. The CRM portion allows you guys to manage resources like subcontractors and suppliers, in addition to just nurturing your leads and client relationships and stuff like that as well. So what else? Of course, as you guys go through and you start assigning your resources on the schedule itself, you'll occasionally get the little icons over here on the left-hand side to indicate to you that you have resource conflicts, or that you've got that ASAP feature set, or various other things could happen as well in this, like the task is moving along swimmingly, or maybe it's stuck in one spot, so you might see the little pause symbol there. But you'll also be able to use some of the information available in here to generate reports. Some of these reports are tremendous, like you've got conflict reports over here on the left-hand side, or if you guys are using workflows, then you can do, baselines, then you can do a baseline schedule report to show the results of any delays that you guys might have hit. We're located in Alabama, and actually over the past couple of days, we've had pretty bad weather, to include tornadoes touching down. If one of those ever hits a job site, or we're ever under any kind of tornado warning, obviously my guys aren't going to be out on the job site for that. So this is a whole day that we lose. So I'd create a baseline, come in here and run a baseline schedule report to see the long-term impact of that. And I could share that with my clients as well to let them know that the job is going to be a few days delayed because, well, we've got tornadoes. Not really much you can do on the job site with tornadoes. So again, baseline schedule report is a great tool for this, and as you look through some of the other options as well, you'll see things like there's that conflict report, work orders you can run from this, status reports, list notes reports, and things like that as well. Now, some of the other options that you guys can also take advantage of in this case. I've mentioned working with templates, and templates are amazing tools for making sure that all your information in here gets set up correctly ahead of time. Do as much of that work beforehand as possible. I'm a huge fan of that. But some of you guys might have very, very unique jobs, and it's a little bit easier to create schedules from the estimates. And if that's the case, then you'll always have an option under the file menu in the estimate to create a new schedule from that estimate. In my case, you've actually got options to create new estimates from this schedule. And that's where you guys might be able to pull in some of the additional information that you guys have put together in those estimates to create your schedules. All the groups and tasks, at least, would match up to your categories and subcategories from the estimate. And from there, you'll just need to go in and put in the durations and the predecessors for all your tasks and build that thing out. Sometimes some of you guys might have an easier time doing that because you might have smaller estimates or smaller schedules. You don't want to put together this massive template that needs to be trimmed down to make it work. So sometimes it might be easier to build your estimates or build your schedules from your estimates. Other times it might be easier to just use your templates. Again, I would recommend that you use whichever you think is going to be faster for you, and they both have amazing benefits. The nice thing about using the template, though, is if your estimates are pretty similar to your templates, if your estimates are fairly similar to your schedules, then using a template pre-builds all of these predecessor relationships, and then you can pull anything else that you need from the estimate by syncing it with the estimate here. This will not add new tasks to the schedule because you have more tasks in the estimate. It'll also avoid adding new content to your estimate just because you guys have put in tasks here like foundation inspection. These things don't necessarily belong in the other, and syncing an estimate and a schedule don't create new activities or tasks or change orders or anything. If you ever need to add in time because of a change order, you'll have to manually add in that change order item and put it in somewhere wherever it belongs in the schedule. Maybe even fitting it in between two existing tasks and creating new relationships that connect that change order in somehow. So sometimes that's just going to be necessary, and keep that in mind. However, it's the simplest thing in the world. In a situation like that, I would recommend just coming down to the area that has the change order, right-click, add a task, plug it in however you need, foundation, change order, and then just set up a couple of relationships here to make sure that it fits in with everything else. Follows task ID 12, and then 12 finish to start would now need to be 14 finish to start. Change order is probably going to take about 2 days. All done. Change order has now been incorporated. So again, in this case, you've built that in, you can see the adjustments and everything like that, and where I went wrong in that case was I didn't set up a baseline first, but that's okay. This is all just for fun anyway, so you can kind of see how it works out. So again, that's going to be linking all of this information together. And when it comes time to share the information, your number one best option, especially for those of you guys who have TotalCare and SuiteLink in place, will be to publish this all to ConstructionOnline. Rachel is going to take over with our ConstructionOnline webinar tomorrow, taking you guys through that full process. But the lovely thing about this, the ConstructionOnline publish, or the publish to ConstructionOnline option here, is you're taking all of this work that you've already done, you're putting it out there to the outside world, and allowing some of the online features like GamePlan to kick in and keep everybody notified of what they're supposed to be doing, when they're supposed to be on the job site, and everything that they're supposed to do when they get there. So it's a great tool for making sure that everything gets out there. If you guys prefer to do the paper copies, you can certainly print out PDFs or anything like that you guys want to. You've got some export options to generate images that you can send as email attachments. You can also export to MS Project, Oracle, Primavera, which is P3 or P6, or SureTrack. On the flip side, you can import from similar formats as well. But I find that most people, once they get started working with these things, all the other scheduling programs kind of fall by the wayside. You don't need to use them because you've got so much of the integrated functionality here with ConstructionSuite that it just becomes a waste of time to work with those other systems. But take a look for yourself, guys. I'm sure you'll come to the same conclusion. And when you get in here and you start working with this, especially if you just need something quick and easy, nothing beats the drag and drop functionality here on the schedule. And as you save it, like I mentioned earlier, it all pushes back into the calendar in ConstructionSuite. And that way you can see how this job meets in with everything else as well. Now, of course, that's going to wrap up what we have for you guys today. I saw that there was a couple of questions that I've kind of pushed off on for the time being. But if you guys do have other questions, by all means, go ahead and send those in to us right now. We're going to take the next 5 minutes or so answering any of these questions that you guys might have. For those of you who are pretty comfortable now with the scheduling tools and all the features and functions that you guys have available to you here, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, my name is Ian Schaefer. I'm here with UDA Technologies, and this is actually going to wrap our on-plan scheduling webinar, especially as it pertains to UDA Technologies or UDA ConstructionSuite. Don't forget to join us tomorrow if you guys are interested in taking a look at some of the great features available on ConstructionOnline, and you'll be able to see how you can take advantage of all the work that we've done for the past 4 days with all the amazing tools that are available on ConstructionOnline. So please, oh please, join Rachel for that one tomorrow starting at 3 o'clock Central. For now, though, like I said, I'm going to shift gears and flip over into the question and answer portion. First question that I've got right now is how do we figure out which version of UDA do you have? So I've been talking about some of the different features that are available in some versions and not in other versions. One of those, of course, we talked about Premiere and Catalyst today. I can't remember exactly where that one came into play, but ultimately, if you're ever curious about what you guys have, come back to the ConstructionSuite main interface here, go up to the Help menu, and check the About screen. When you go to Help and About, it'll tell you which version you guys have right here at the top, Product, CM Enterprise 25. You'll be able to see your license key and your order number and all that fun information. You'll also be able to see your version number here, and on this screen, you can see which updates might be available for you guys as well. So in this case, if you guys wanted to make sure that you're always on the latest and the greatest version, go ahead and open up the help and about screen. You'll see that information here. And ultimately, the way the structure goes for ConstructionSuite, there are effectively 5 tiers on the residential and commercial product lines. You start on each of them with something kind of akin to the standard or light version. Standard on the residential, light on the commercial. Your next tier up is going to be pro or contractor. Contractor on the commercial, pro on the residential, and that's actually the first version that has the scheduling and calendar capabilities. When you move up from pro to premier, or from contractor to catalyst on the commercial side, this will start to add in some of the additional tools like insurance tracking and change order management and stuff like that. It's also the first that includes the workflow, which is my favorite feature, and one that hopefully most of you guys have access to. But when you go from Premier up to Corporate on the residential side, Catalyst up to Developer on the commercial side, that's when it starts to throw in some of the multi-user capabilities and project permissioning and things like that. The top tier, the Network and Enterprise versions, are packages. Network is a 5-user version of the residential corporate licenses. Enterprise is a 5-pack of the developer licenses, and they each come with a built-in server license as well. So you're really getting a 5+1 with those packages. So great, and they're very feature rich, and they've got everything that you guys would need, with the exception of the online tools, which that's going to be available via ConstructionOnline and connected via SuiteLink. So take a look at those tomorrow as well. Great question, though.